I just shut it off.
Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the cEDH cast. My name is Ian, and with me, as always, is the stream runner today, Braden.
Hello.
Hey, today we are going to be breaking down Braden's Halden and Paco deck. Woo woo!
Yeah, Alden and Paco, the teamer partners who've changed cEDH forever. Finally, a teamer
Yeah,
can not be
be
playing
played.
50 creature spells.
I completely agree.
So, yeah, we're just going to be going over this deck list as well as, talking to the chat, answering questions, and doing other stuff that, people generally, do when they play Paco. So,
Agreed. Braden, can you send me the list as well, my friend?
oh yeah, for sure. I'll do that right now.
Lovely.
So I just want to make a quick apology to all the people watching. I just had a bit of a case of minor brain damage, so
Just
that
minor, just like a
may
little
be a
amount.
complication. Um,
Uh,
my nose is currently the
Braden,
size of an apple.
yeah. So he's doing his best, and we appreciate the fact that you still showed up, buddy. Even though I
Oh
did tell you I
yeah,
would take it solo.
I texted Ian. I was like, hey, by the way, may have just seriously injured myself. It's all good. Um,
Yeah.
my nose is huge.
Yeah.
Thank God we don't use webcams. And
And then I told him I could take over, and he was like, "What do you know about Paco?" And I said, "Good point. See you in a couple minutes."
yeah, that was basically how that conversation went. So, uh, I guess
Uh,
before we get started, I just want everyone to know, like, I've spent some time writing a bit of a, not a primer, but a, just like a quick rundown on
an
some of the stuff
intro,
that this
yeah.
deck has that's like very strange and weird. For example, we're on Seasons Pass loops, and the famous Seasons Pass champion Sinestra has graciously helped me with these loops. Everyone knows that Seasons Pass is Sinestra's favorite Magic card, and he appreciates that we always make sure that everyone's aware of that.
No, just to check, this definitely isn't the Sinestro who begged you not to tell people that they
Yeah,
suggested season pass.
he definitely told me not to tell anyone. So,
Yeah.
oops.
So great start to the stream.
Yeah. So, yeah. What can I say? I just appreciate honesty. So, in addition to this little primer, we're just going to, just answer some questions people have of the deck and talk about what the deck does. So I guess I'll get started on that after spending 5 minutes explaining what I was going to do. So, Halden is a human wizard, and he's a tiny boy. He's a 1/4, and he has a really interesting ability, which is you may play non-creature cards from exile with fetch counters on them if you exiled them, which means that if your opponent like steals your Paco or steals your Halden, they don't like get the cards that you've exiled, which is like really important. And then you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells, which is important for cards like Ancient Tomb or Gaia's Cradle or Soul Ring. So just something to keep in mind. And then Paco is the star of the show. It's a 5 mana 3/3 with haste. The haste is super relevant. Whenever Paco Arcane Retriever attacks, you exile the top card of each player's library and put a fetch counter on each of them. Then, Paco gets a +1/+1 counter for each non-creature card exiled this way. So if you exile like 2 lands, a Soul Ring, and a Mana Dork, Paco becomes a 6/6. And that's before combat damage. So Paco goes into combat usually much bigger than a 3/3, which is like very important to the deck. It's like something that everyone everyone like reads over and doesn't initially see, but it's oh yes, people like the name, uh, or they really don't. But initially, that's something a lot of people missed, and I think that is probably actually like one of the things that made Paco a lot better was the fact that Paco just can't get like chump blocked.
Yeah.
You either have to trade your Gitrog monster for it, or I just don't attack a player with a Gitrog monster, of course. But
Right.
you have to have Death Touch really to take down Paco. Paco gets huge. I've seen him be 2020s. I've seen him be. I think the smallest I ever had him be was a 3/3 because he got bounced to my hand before the trigger resolved.
Right.
At one time, like a blind obedience stopped him from attacking, but usually he gets pretty big pretty quickly. Commander damage is like totally relevant. All your opponents are going to have to track their commander damage with Paco. It's going to be something you have to think about a lot, which is
Yeah.
hilarious.
I think the funny part is that not only is Paco a great Tymna blocker, but so is Halden. So,
Oh yeah, so
that's definitely something for you there.
it's super relevant to think about though. Like, so Halden blocks Nagila, and it kills the Nagila tokens. It's not a 0/4, which is kind of relevant. It blocks Thrasios. It blocks Tymna. It blocks your blind Mind Blade renders, your Yurikos. It
Yeah.
blocks. It blocks everything really. Like, it doesn't block Crom, and that's about it. And usually they're using that Crom to block the Paco because the Paco is coming in for 15. So
Yeah.
that's something you have to really think about. So
Now,
one
I
deck
was gonna
build.
say, let's just seeing this deck. Everyone's gonna. I think if you look at the deck list and while we go over it, to really analyze this deck correctly, Braden's gonna talk about it in more detail. But it is not like really any cEDH deck I've seen before. So going into this deck tech, definitely keep that in mind that the deck does not play out like your average cEDH deck.
Yeah, it's kind of like, imagine like if like the closest thing I'd say in terms on the combat end of the spectrum is like Nagila. Like, Nagila isn't winning through commander damage, but it is like winning the game a lot of the time through pressure, and Paco will do that too. Like, just by pressuring your opponent's life totals, like you naturally make it harder for them to win. But Paco's doing that in like single swings, where Nagila is like overflowing them, so they naturally
Yeah, that
like
makes sense.
lead to different things. So like you're attacking people's like resources of creatures because they have to chump block every turn, and
Hmm.
that means sometimes like you can't attack their life totals as aggressively as Najila. But it's just something to think about. I know that
Right.
Pongo's in the chat right now, so he's probably gonna like correct me on that, and he'll probably be right. Um, so one thing I wanted to go over is that you'll see like we're not really playing a lot of like creature payoffs. We're playing a lot of dorks, but that's because we need those like extremely explosive starts. We're not really paying on any like creature payoffs, and that's because like when you flip your a creature off of Paco, it just gets exiled and put away forever. And I found that every time I
Right.
play like a consecrated Sphinx or some, like something in that tier, it just is better to play like either a planeswalker like Narset or Jace, or
Hmm.
play a card like Seasons Pass, which we'll see down here, or an extra turn spell. So a lot of our payoff cards are actually at the higher CMC.
Yeah.
Are actually like a lot of our payoffs that are at the higher end of the CMC spectrum are actually our non-creature spells because we can exile them off of Paco.
Right.
All these cards except for Gilded Drake are really just about mana acceleration, and that's basically what the deck is it's mana acceleration, counter spells, and extra turn spells.
Yeah.
So, Gilded Drake's just a staple. You kind of have to play that card, but pretty much every other card in the deck that's a creature is something that cares about mana acceleration.
Yeah. Now, do you do you also play the Gilded Drake to get your Paco back? I assume.
Um, Surprisingly, I don't think I've ever done that. Uh,
Oh wow.
I play a
Yeah,
lot of
because I
bounce
guess your
spells.
opponents would have to have two
I
cards to really get the payoff too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they don't want to steal Paco. They just want to kill it because Paco doesn't
Yeah.
do anything for them except like pressure
Exactly. That's
someone
what I
else's
meant.
life
Yeah.
total, and like that's kind of
Right.
aligned with your plans. So you don't really care.
Right.
And I play a lot of bounce spells, which you'll find. So, and that's because it synergizes really well with Dockside. It also synergizes really well with our Underworld Breach and our extra turns plan. So
Are
we're
you
excited to
still
play them.
playing Song or no?
No, I'm not. I'm not on Song of
Oh,
Creativity.
okay.
So Song of Creativity was a card I was playing before, and I've actually moved away from that plan because it just was a little bit too swingy and it didn't win me enough games consistently.
Gotcha.
I've basically replaced Song with Seasons Past, and I think it's a pretty good trade.
Yeah, that feels like an appropriate switch for the deck at least.
Yeah. So we're gonna go into the sorcery section, which I think is like an interesting section of the deck. You'll see we have like Faithless Looting, Gamble, Gataxian Probe. Those are pretty standard cards I think you'll see in a teamer deck. Inferno Plunge is an interesting card that people are pretty surprised to see, and I think it's something you just have to play. So Inferno Plunge is like a Culling the Weak in red. So you sacrifice a creature and you get 3 mana. It's like a one-time effect on the sorcery. And the reason you're playing that is like the idea is you go turn one dork. It could be a Boreal Druid or a Birds of Paradise. It doesn't really matter. You on turn two you tap the dork for mana, and then you sack it to Infernal Plunge. So
Yeah.
you profit 3 mana from that exchange, and that gives you
Right.
enough mana to play your turn 2 Paco, which is very important. You almost always want to mulligan until you have a turn 2 Paco. So by playing Infernal Plunge, you're upping the density of cards that allow you to get to that turn 2 Paco,
Yep.
and which helps the deck like become more consistent. So
Now, I was curious about Faithless Looting. That seems a little out of place in the deck. Why is that there?
so it's a lot of times you'll have like starting hands where you end up with like you might go like land, mana crypt, play some 2 mana rock, or you'll have like a starting, or on turn 2 you have enough mana to play Halden plus like 1 mana left over. There's a lot of times where on the curve you just kind of awkwardly have mana left over, and I like having like 1 mana cards that you can just like do card advantage with.
Sure.
So the deck is playing tons of dead cards. So like half the deck is cards I would describe as like mana sources, and so Faithless Looting just helps you like chug through those as you've already gone way beyond the number of mana sources you actually need that game.
Gotcha.
So like you might keep a 7 that's just literally like set like 6 mana sources in a Faithless Looting, and you'll feel like pretty good about it because you get the turn 2 Paco, you get the turn 3 Halden, and then you can start like using the Faithless Looting to either throw away your dead cards and then hope that you hit like interaction off of the Paco triggers that you'll hopefully have like 2 of.
So you're saying the raw dig is better for you than, say, a card like Opt, which is more of a card filtering.
Yeah, I guess like it's almost like I'm fine having card like there's a lot of times where like I'm just digging for like a regrowth or a extra turn spell, and I don't really care about how many cards are in my hand because I have like 30 cards in exile that are like useful. I'm just like I'm trying to look for my 1 copy of Capture of Jingzhou, you know? Because like
that makes
then
sense.
I can use that with like the regrowth I have in my hand to like maybe take 2 extra turns, which is enough to dig me like a tutor off of my opponents or something like that. So that's why I'm playing Faithless Looting. Personal Tutor is really interesting because it's like a 2-card combo with Seasons Past. So what you do is you Personal Tutor for Seasons Past, you Seasons Past your Personal Tutor back, and I think I got that wrong. One sec.
And a time walk effect, right?
No. What you do is if you have a Personal Tutor, you Personal Tutor for Seasons Past. You cast Seasons Past. Wait, I think I'm doing this in the wrong order. Sorry, I know this works. Sorry, I did.
What are you trying to do?
So basically, what you can do is once you have a Personal Tutor in your hand and a Seasons Past in your hand, you can take infinite turns because you Personal Tutor for an extra turn.
You need
spell.
the Personal Tutor. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you already need the extra turn spell. That's what you need. So if you need
or
both,
Seasons Past the other way around.
Yeah. So if you have Personal Tutor and Seasons Past, you use Personal Tutor to get an extra turn spell. You exile it off Paco. You cast it, then you Seasons Past back the Personal Tutor and the extra turn spell. And then if you have the extra turn spell already in the Personal Tutor, you Personal Tutor for the Seasons Past, cast the extra turn spell, get the Seasons Past off the Paco trigger, and now you have infinite turns.
Right.
So
you actually can do that loop with just Personal Tutor because you Personal Tutor, get the Seasons Past, get back the Personal Tutor, put the Personal Tutor, get the Time Walk spell, and then go from there if you want to go the long way around.
The problem is the Seasons Pass gets shuffled back in. The Seasons Pass gets shuffled back in is the problem.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Sorry, that's what I was having trouble with it. I know how the deck works.
Right.
I just was having
trouble saying it. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is that also works with Mystical Tutor. So basically, we have 2 copies of so a Personal Tutor plus an extra turn spell or a Mystical Tutor plus an extra turn spell is a win, which means we have like 5 copies of all those cards and the Seasons Past, which also works. So it just means we have tons of redundancy on our infinite combos, and they're all like pretty high quality cards in our deck. So
Braden, I'm getting some questions from chat here. River wants to know why there is an unsubstantiate in the deck.
Why isn't there?
Yeah.
I think we want to be able to bounce our Underworld Breach to our hand for when we want to take like semi-infinite turns with Underworld Breach, and that doesn't bounce it to our hand, does it? It only bounces creatures, right? It's like creatures or spells.
No, I believe it does.
Here.
Let me check. I'm Googling it at the moment. Return target, spell, or creature. Yep, you're right.
Yeah, so because it only returns creatures,
stuff,
it's not quite good enough because we want to bounce Underworld Breach, which I'll get to that in a minute. Let me just finish the...
Second question from Burly Panda. Do you still believe Paco is better than Animar? And before you even answer, I'm going to slap down a yes real hard on that. But
I think it's like Probably with the seasons before seasons passed, we were playing seasons past. It was like probably close and probably a little bit worse. I think it's better now. They're very different though. Like one's like kind of glass cannon, extremely quick. This is like very very resilient and slow. So like we need 13
Hmm.
mana to win the game usually, and that's like
Yeah.
absurd. But our deck makes 13 mana because our deck is like almost exclusively mana sources.
Yeah.
So so
See,
oh
you
yeah.
continue.
Oh, I don't like Seize the Day or World at War because they don't untap our lands, and we need lots of mana
Exactly.
to cast
Yeah.
all of our spells. So
See, the difference between this and a deck like Narset is that deck doesn't need the mana to keep going, whereas
yeah, we
Braden gets
do.
another combat. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter if he
yeah.
doesn't have the mana to use it.
Because then we just spent 5 mana, we don't get anything out of it. Or with the extra turn spells,
Right.
it doubles as like a extra combat step and untaps all of our lands, which is like insane.
Exactly.
When we have like 13 mana already. So one card I want to talk about is also Explore. We exile people's lands with our Paco, and so
Yeah.
the card that's usually better is Growth Spiral. But if we don't have lands in our hand, the Growth Spiral doesn't do anything. Where if our opponent's lands are still in exile, we can cast Explore with no lands in our hand and just immediately play 2 lands and draw a card. So I found that to be like really powerful.
Hmm.
It also helps us get to that point where we have 13 mana, so we can win the game with the Personal Tutor plus Seasons
Yeah.
Pass plus extra turn spell.
So, do you want to talk about the fact that you're playing both Nature's Lore and Three Visits in here?
Yeah, sure. So we're trying to. So we also have another card in our deck called Mystic Sanctuary, and so we need 3 islands in play to do that. And using our Explore, Nature's Lore, and 3 visits just helps us get ahead on land drops, so that while we're like trying to ramp out Paco or ramp out Halton, we can also get ahead on lands, so that like on turn 4 or 5 we can actually crack one of our opponent's fetch lands or our own fetch lands, get the Mystic Sanctuary to put an extra turn spell back on top of our deck, and then we can start like looping extra turns.
Right.
So
Do you want to throw that up on screen for people just so they can
Mystic
see?
Sanctuary, yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you usually do as a combo with it, or is it just an
It's just an
additional
extra.
value
It's just
piece?
an extra turn spell we can crack. We can get from our opponent's cards. So
Yeah,
like,
and as someone who's played a good amount with Mystic Sanctuary, especially in decks that are running these turns effects, the amount of times you can just steal a game out of nowhere by just cracking a Sanctuary and taking an extra turn, and then suddenly you've taken like 2 or 3 in a row just because you end stepped fetched with that Sanctuary. I've done it several times, and it can be very
it's also
backbreaking
like
when
an
you do.
extra turn spell. It's if you think about it, like because of how many times we have extra turn spells in our graveyard, it's like an extra
Yeah,
turn spell that we get to play off of our opponent's cards, which is very powerful. So, um, our opponents are usually playing like 5 cards that get Mystic Sanctuary. They're usually playing or 4 cards that get Mystic Sanctuary, like somewhere around there. And this is this is like it's worth like running this card and playing these ramp spells so we can do that.
you're
Additionally,
saying getting your opponent's fetch lands off of Paco and
yeah,
using those. That's pretty
yeah,
great. Yeah.
yeah. So like even if we don't have our fetch lands, we can use Nature's Lore and 3 visits to get our breeding pools out, and then get the Mystic Sanctuary. Additionally, like
Yeah.
we're just trying to get ahead on lands, and by playing these spells, like they get around. Sure, they like they lose to Aven Mind Sensor, but they also are better than the artifacts against any artifact hate that we're like going to just naturally run into. So I think these cards are like better than people think, but in our deck they're especially useful. Um, so then we have the wheels. So like a lot of times we're just trying to like chain extra turns together and be able to be like extra turn wheel, go to my next turn, like like play an extra turn again, or like a regrowth effect, play the extra turn, wheel again. Being able to chain wheels is really powerful. And additionally, we're also on Narset Parter Veils, which is a very good card into our natural wheel synergies. Also,
Yeah.
Time Twister just being like a card that puts all of our cards back into our deck is like really powerful. Because
Hmm.
like sometimes like we just we can't cast our spells from our graveyard because maybe like a Graph Digger's Cage, but we can once we put Capture back in our deck, we can like tutor it up and
Yeah.
start winning.
Yeah. And I want to be clear for people in chat, just to like clarify something. For those of you not familiar with the win conless concept, it's basically when your deck just has enough efficient cards that it doesn't need a hard win con. And I think this deck list is like the epitome of what a win
Well,
con
our
list looks like.
our like win con is Paco, so like we're just trying to take infinite turns and then attack people with Paco.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's like what our general game plan is. So
In a sense, kind of, if anyone's played against God Eternal Kefnet, the play patterns sort of similar in that way that you just as soon as the turns happen, you're just getting beat to death, right? So
yeah, so I'm gonna continue down the line. So if you'll
yeah,
see here, like this is our instance, it's just interaction. Like these are just the good teamwork cards. I'm not going to talk about a lot of them. Uh, Muddly Mixture Tutors for Underworld Breach. Reap is a combo piece actually in our deck. So if our opponent has two or more black permanents in play, we can return two cards from our graveyard to our hand. If we return a Noxious Revival and an extra turn spell, we can cast those. We can Noxious Revival the Reap back to the top of our deck, and now we have infinite turns. So Reap is an instant speed regrowth a lot of the time, and then sometimes if we're playing against like Luris or Zur the Enchanter or Gitrog or any of the any deck that's playing like less than 4 colors and is in black, we're usually going to have Reap be live most of the game. And
now Luris is the new Orzhov cat, right?
Yeah, I've been playing that
okay.
a lot because Draw is testing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's not a lot of too spicy cards here. We have Deflecting Swat and Fierce Guardianship, which are the new counter spells from Ikoria or Commander 20. Deflecting Swat lets us redirect counter spells back onto the Deflecting Swat or the other counter spell. I forget how it works, but it's basically a counter spell by the end of the day. And then also it protects our commander from removal.
Spot removal, yep.
Yeah, so like we can like be like, oh, you want a Gilded Drake or Pako? How about you Gilded Drake this person's Timna or something like that?
Yeah.
So
I do love seeing the right in a row, just Deflecting Swat, Fierce Guardianship, Force of Negation, Force of Vigor, Force of Will, Submerge. All these just free spells, just right in a row. We
tap out on turn 2 so often that like we have to like be able to do that. We're also playing wheels, so a lot of the times like like we'll like tap out, we'll play everything, and then we'll cast a wheel, and being able to like know that we're pretty guaranteed to like hit something free that interacts with our opponents. Or
that's pretty cool.
Is pretty powerful. Yeah. The reason we're not on Pact Negation is because we're an extra turns deck, and like that'll kind of screw us up sometimes.
Sure.
But maybe we should be on it. I don't know. These are pretty standard. We're just trying to like mulligan until we hit enough mana to play an early Paco, and all these cards help us do that.
Yeah. That is one thing about this deck that I think is pretty unique to it, is that you have all 3 forms of the cEDH like common and even uncommon ramp, right? You have artifact ramp, you have creature ramp, and you have sorcery ramp, like straight up land ramp, right?
Yeah, so basically we're just trying to like ramp out really quickly. The whole deck is just ramp and counter spells, and then we can just win with our extra turn spells, which are also just kind of like ramp. Think about
it's pretty explosive.
Yeah. So we'll go to our enchantments, and here's like where there's a little spice here.
Before we go to there, we have a question from chat about how it has been doing for you. How's the list
really
been
well.
playing?
I think this deck's like the real deal. It's been pretty successful.
I remember in your first 3 games you were like 2 and 3. So has the win rate kept up, or?
Yeah, I'd say so. It's like I'm probably winning 40% of games to like 30% of games, somewhere in that range, maybe closer to 30% of games.
Yeah.
I will say like I keep getting targeted in my games because like people are afraid of Paco and they're learning to like respect it.
Yeah.
And then I still win because people either don't know. I don't know if it's because people don't know how. Like they're like, they're not interacting with it in the way it needs to be interacted with, or if it's just because like Paco's just really good and.
Well, I think it goes to a lot of the problem we have in cEDH right now in general, where our meta is so cultivated to fight on a certain axis, which is kind of why I prefaced this deck tech by saying we are playing on a different axis than most decks in our format.
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing that happens whenever someone introduces a casual deck into a cEDH deck, right? So if someone's playing a battle cruiser deck, and if they're not being interacted with, then they play a big thing that our format doesn't know how to handle. People lose to that, right? Paco is different. I'm not saying it's like that. I'm saying it has the same effect that people just don't know how to handle a hasty 7/7.
Yeah,
right?
You can't build your deck. You can't build your deck to be good against Flash Hulk and be good against Paco. Like it's just not really possible.
Exactly.
So you have to pick or be medium on both, and so if you're gonna like, to be honest, I think it's wrong to build your deck to beat Paco, because like once you
Right.
stop playing with me, you're gonna lose a lot of games. There's like a turn 2 ad nauseum or a turn 2 or 3 flash. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, and that's just like the reality, right? So
Sure.
my deck is built to interact very early while also putting out my game plan. Like you'll see all these counter spells, right? I'm just trying to interact with that early flash, that early ad naus,
Right.
and maybe even
Right.
backup interaction with like like my dispels,
Mhm.
my dispels, my mental missteps, stuff like that. Is trying
Yeah.
to just interact my pyroblast, or just trying to interact very early with it while holding up very little mana, and then I am trying to, just interact early so that when the late game happens and I have a Paco that's like a 15-15, people just aren't ready to interact with it, and I have all this interaction that I've been saving up or have been collecting with Paco, and I win the game.
Right.
And
So, yeah. Sorry, what were you saying?
I just think that people aren't ready to handle it, and I don't think they're supposed to be, which is kind of like the fun of the
I
deck.
agree. So, two questions from chat, I think very important. Talking about your win rate while we're on that conversation, what decks have you been playing against a lot lately? How's it? Have you been playing a diverse sort of
Uh,
play group? Or?
yeah, I mean, I've just been playing on the cEDH Discord, so
Right.
yeah, I'd say it's pretty diverse. I don't know.
Cool.
I've played against Flash Hulk. I've played against Obus Thief. I've played against like Elish Norn, and
Yeah.
Animar and Nagila, and I've played
The
against a lot of
average
stuff.
gambit you would expect to sort of fight
Yeah,
up
I mean, there's
against.
probably a little
Okay.
bit more people know they're playing against Paco, so they might think that they can play like jank a little bit more, but then they really are supposed to. That's why I say
Yeah.
like, yeah, the win rate's been 30 to 40%. Like you cannot expect that to stay.
Of
Like,
course, of course.
like
Yeah.
it's going to
Especially
that
seeing
number
as
is
it
going to
started closer to 60. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
like
We have to be more realistic about
yeah, like
how
this deck is
to.
not broken. It's just good. Like I think it's just
It's
a
just
good
good.
deck.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I think it's
so
real, and that's the point.
yeah,
A lot
yeah,
of real decks start like that. When you first play against people, they have no idea how to play against it. You're going to get those wins, and then when people start to figure it out, you're going to drop to that first like 25%
yeah. Garda says when I
level.
first built Strom, I won 4 games in a row. Yeah, like
Yeah, exactly.
when I first like built medium green, I think I won every game for a long time, and then that didn't happen
Yeah,
for a long time.
yeah.
I won the
Fair,
first tournament
fair.
I played Yuriko in.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean I broke Yuriko. The Yuriko list I have now is like way better than that Yuriko list. But
yeah.
people just didn't know how to interact with it. And so
Sure.
I've been playing a lot of Paco though, and people at this point are learning how to interact with it. They just aren't being successful so far. So
That's good. Good.
I don't know what that means,
Uh,
but it's
Yeah.
So I wanted to go over the enchantments because there's like actually some interesting stuff here.
Sorry. Wait. The second thing we had to say was just before we go on that is tackling magistrate. How have you been dealing with that?
We play a lot of bounce spells.
Okay.
We play Force
Yeah.
of Will. That's kind of how
Yeah.
it's been. We lose to
Gotcha.
it. We don't do very
Yeah.
well. If we can land a
It's bad for the
Paco,
deck.
if we can land
Yeah.
a Paco before it enters, like we have a decent chance because we can just start attacking for like 7, then 10,
Yeah.
15. Like
And they have to block eventually.
yeah,
right?
they do have
So-
to block eventually unless they're Luris. But it's it's a problem. It's like a really big problem.
Definitely.
For the deck. And so like
Gotcha.
people are going to be playing that card. It's really good. We just
Yeah.
have to have answers for it. That's why we're on Submerge. We have to be able to be like, oh, you just played that? Oh, bounce it. like, and then tap out for Paco. So, just something we have to be thinking about.
Exactly.
They're just, yeah, we just got to play interaction. There's nothing I'd really change right now if I kept seeing it
Gotcha.
more, but
There's a funny thing. What the grind plan of the deck is definitely Paco. I don't know if you've played against the deck yet, but you're ripping 3, 4, 5 cards every time you're going around the
yeah,
table.
the grind
with this
plan
thing.
is
Like,
Paco.
it's insane.
So like, let's say like the counter
It's
your
insane.
Paco,
Yeah.
then you just play the other ramp spells that are in your hand, and then you play Paco.
Yeah.
Oh, they
Yeah.
countered Paco a second time. Well, we're dead to Flash, because you just
Yeah.
countered Paco twice. Like
Right.
it's like saying like I don't see your grind plan. Like you only have a Thrasios and a Tymna in the command zone. It's like
Exactly.
Paco draws about 4 cards a turn, and that's good enough. 4 cards
Yeah.
a turn is good enough that we don't really need any other grind plan. We have the wheels. The wheels help a lot. So like a lot of times,
Yeah.
like like Paco dies, the last card in our hand's a wheel. We wheel, and then we draw a fresh 7. We might draw into like one of our free bounce spells, one of our removal spells, and we get to like start doing stuff again. but that's the plan. So I want to get to the enchantments.
Yes.
Exploration. So this card's insane in our deck because we get to play our opponent's lands. And so we get to play, we're going to hit lands. A lot of our opponent's decks are lands. And so as we hit lands, we want to be able to play them. And so the best lands to play are our fetch lands because they help us get our cards out of our deck that can help us work towards a Mystic Sanctuary. You have to be afraid of Marsh Flats, so you don't get to play Marsh Flats. Very important. You do not get to play Marsh Flats. But otherwise, it's very, very powerful. Playing basics is also good because you just start stealing people's basics, and then they lose to Blood Moon even worse. And you don't. Mystic Armor is typical, Wild Growth is typical, some libraries typical, Underworld Breach. So obviously we're in Teamer, we're playing Underworld Breach, but we do have some combos with Underworld Breach, and I wanted to go over those. So first of all, if we play an Underworld Breach and we have a bounce spell and a extra turn spell in our graveyard, we can start to loop extra turns. It's not infinite, right, but you can at least take a few infinite turns in a row. So what you do is you play your Underworld Breach, you cast your extra turn spell, exiling 3 cards from your graveyard. Then you cast a bounce spell, bouncing your Underworld Breach to your hand. You'll go to your end step, you'll have no Underworld Breach on the battlefield, so you don't have to sacrifice it. You go to your next turn. You cast your Underworld Breach. You play your extra turn spell, you bounce the Underworld Breach back to your hand. Every time you do this, it costs probably 8 mana, and then it also exiles 6 cards from your deck, from your graveyard, sorry. So it's not infinite, it's definitely very resource intensive, but if you think about it, every time you do this, you draw 4 cards. At least. I mean, that's assuming you're not like, you don't have a Sylvan Library in play, or you don't have a Mystic or a Ristic Study in play, or you don't have a Wheel of Fortune you hit eventually that lets you, feed your graveyard again.
One thing that I think people miss a lot when they talk about soft extra turn locks is that soft extra turn locks often turn into hard blocks.
Oh yeah,
right?
For sure. Like,
this is the value you gain. It's not like you're using every single resource.
For example,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Additionally, like, we can just start using our Wheel of Fortune to put a bunch of cards into our graveyard, so that now it's like a 10 mana or 11 mana combo. But at least we're refilling our hand every turn. You do have to be afraid of your opponents drawing free counter spells, but it's just something to think about. It's just a loop you can do that allows you to like get so far ahead that it's impossible for your opponents to keep up.
Gotcha.
Resolving a Season's Pass does about the same thing. I mean, worst case scenario, right? You're doing this loop, and then you hit a wheel, and then you wheel into like a Narset. Then you make everyone discard their hands, and then you start, doing the wheel thing where you wheel every turn. So you put 7 cards in your graveyard, which you exile to take an extra turn. Each time you're beating people with your Pako, slowly, stealing their cards. That's good enough. So.
Yeah.
Then we have lands, and our lands are pretty typical. We're on the Fiery Islet and Waterlog Grove. You will crack those for cards at some point. We're on Gaia's Cradle, and you may be kind of surprised we're on Gaia's Cradle, but Gaia's Cradle is pretty good with our overall plan. So we're playing every dork that's legal, basically. We're playing a few other cards, but we have 2 commanders in the command zone, which give us like a slight advantage with Gaia's Cradle already, right? So like Gaia's Cradle is usually the 3rd land you play. Like you play the Pako on turn 2, turn 3 you play the Gaia's Cradle, you play Halden, and then you attack. And now you have a Gaia's Cradle that taps for 2 mana, and that green mana can be cast can be used to cast any of the spells you hit because Halden filters your mana. So like you could play a Necropotence with a Gaia's Cradle.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty spicy.
Yeah. So like you can even play your extra turn spells with the Gaia's Cradle. So that's just something to think about. Is there anything else really?
So if you could explain in your own words, we're talking about Trionic Resonator in the chat.
Pako? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to explain why sort of the 4 mana isn't really worth it because you're not getting the spells for free. But if you can explain it better in your own words.
Sorry, Garda just got censored. I had to allow the comment to go through. So you can play the cards until forever, like until the end of the game. You can play those cards.
Exactly.
So it just says if they have a fetch counter on them. So one thing, sorry, I'm just trying to see the chat real quick. So how often do you? So I guess what do I want to cover first? So the Strionic Resonator. Uh, you can cast them forever. I don't understand what Gar is saying. You can cast
Yeah, I
them.
don't know.
You can cast them until they go to the graveyard from you casting them. I don't
Right.
understand what you mean, Garda.
Because they're always exiled with a fetch counter on them.
Yeah. Okay. Um,
So to
Strionic
explain
Resonator.
sort of
The Strionic Resonator.
yeah.
It's pretty close to playable. I'll be honest. Like in the late game, it's kind of insane, right? Like you get to double the trigger. I just don't think it's quite necessary. I think it's a little dead. So it's like probably it's probably like closer than I think it is. I just don't think you need it. And I wanted
It just seems win more to me.
it is a little win more. I mean, so are extra turn spells, but that's like one of our win conditions.
Right.
I could see it being like playable. I'm not sure. I don't think so, but it could be.
Yeah.
So the other thing is, what is interesting to me is, so how often do you actually keep them alive? Almost always. People don't want to interact with the Paco. They just don't. It's wrong. Like you're not supposed to. Like if you're playing against a Paco deck, here's like the ugly reality. Are you gonna force a will a creature that doesn't do anything? No.
Yeah.
If
Right.
you do,
No,
you're kind
not
of
at all.
making a mistake. Like I was talking about this with Shaper, right? I mentioned someone forced to willed my Paco, and he was like, "That's funny," and I was like, "Yeah," and I think I said like, "I don't think I'd ever force a will Paco," and he was like, "Yeah, I would never force a will Paco." Like
Right.
Paco's just a beater that creates card advantage, and you really don't. It's not a win condition necessarily in the same way that other cards are traditionally win conditions. Like he's a win condition
Right.
once you have infinite turns. He's not a win condition once you play him.
Yes.
And if you kill me, that's one more blue player that's not stopping the other players from winning the game. Because my whole game plan is to, grind out. So I'm not an immediate threat. So it's a little
Yes.
it's like countering a tutor, but almost worse because it's not really tutoring for anything. It's just a big fat dog.
Right. The concept is eventually this is going to be a real pain in my ass.
You
but
do need to
it's not
stop
the
it
moment.
before it snowballs, though. You do.
Yes.
The problem is that counter spells are so precious.
Yes.
Like,
and
don't
people
wanna
have
waste
just been off spot removal lately. Like in general, side rant, like people have not been playing a lot of spot removal.
yeah,
in the
that's why
format that
Seaboard
isn't,
Muse
like,
is so good, right? It's like a win
Yes,
condition that
yes.
you can play that dodges most of the counter spells, dodges most of the removal
Exactly.
spells, dodges abrupt decay. Paco dodges abrupt decay. Like,
Yeah.
I would say mana draining a Paco is like fair and good. Like I've had someone mana drain my Paco, and I was the turn immediately after them, and I was kind of like, I don't know. There's two players you're just letting get off scot-free for the next turn, two turns.
Yeah.
But like, I think like the mana
like,
draining a
it's a
Paco is
spicy
definitely
Paco, yeah.
yeah. Like I think mana draining Paco is like definitely like very appealing. I don't like mana draining the turn after I pass. Like the person after me in turn order, I don't like wasting my mana drain there because it leads two other players to like feel like they get to do whatever they want. And I also usually tap out for Paco, so it's kind of scary.
Yeah. Which is, once again, we were talking earlier about all the, if you look towards the end of the instant section, just all of those free counter spells, right?
Yeah. But I will say, like, I said it earlier, I just want to make sure I say it again. Like, you can build your deck to stop Paco from winning. Like, that's not very hard, and Paco becomes really bad if you do that. The power of Paco
Yeah.
is that it's not correct to do that. The correct thing
Right.
is to build your deck to stop Fishfolk.
Yes.
Or decks
Yes,
like
exactly.
it. And
Right.
once you're building your deck to stop Paco, you're really, like, making your deck weaker to, like, the overall meta.
Right. I think because Paco attacks on such a different axis, it makes the deck unique, and that's
Like,
where its strength
what
is.
does your mental misstep do against Paco?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what does it do? Like,
Yes.
So it's just
I
stuff
agree.
like that where, like, I can't play Vampire Tutor. I can't play.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not playing those cards. I'm not playing good cards. I'm playing rampant counter
Right.
spells. So, we have about 20 minutes left before we're going to take a 30-minute like intermission.
Yeah.
And then at 8:30 we're going to start doing gameplay. So I thought we would at least do some test hands. How does that
Yes.
sound?
Let's go down and do that. I love that.
All right. So let's. What a nice, beautiful curve. Fat fives.
Yeah.
But also just some information you guys might all like.
For a deck with a seasons pass and extra turns, 1.91 average CMC is pretty good.
I got to be able to cast those ad nauseas,
Yeah. Right.
All right. I don't like this hand. I'm just gonna let's try to get a better one. Oh,
Okay.
okay. This hand's like I see some appeal. There's some appeal to this hand.
Okay. All right, let's break it down. So we have Into the Royal Talisman of Creativity, Wheel of Fortune, Mana Vault, Force of Vigor, Verdant Catacombs, and Elvish Mystic, or Llanowar Elves, whatever. It's an elf.
Yeah. So this hand has a. Does it have a turn two Paco? It's really close.
It does not.
So if you go turn one Verdant Catacombs Dork, then turn two you play the Dork into a Mana Vault. If you top deck a land on your next two lands, you have a turn two Paco.
Yes. Or if you just top deck a land.
Yeah. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna get a with this Verdant Catacombs, you're gonna get a Taiga, right?
Right.
And then worst case scenario, like actual worst case scenario. So you're gonna go turn one Verdant Catacombs, Llanowar Elves. Turn two,
Right.
you're gonna Llanowar Elves the Mana Vault, Mana Vault into Talisman, cast Wheel of Fortune if you don't hit a land.
Right.
And then you're just gonna
Seems
draw a
pretty
fresh
okay.
7. And this is just say this is the fresh 7 you draw. Yeah, it feels pretty good. So it's saying that this is your fresh 7 off the Wheel of Fortune. So yeah, I think that starting hand was pretty good. Anytime you have a Mana Vault, you have to like really make an argument for not keeping a Mana Vault hand because it lets
this
you
is definitely a weird case because you don't usually see green decks in this format loving Mana Vault, but this is that deck.
So this is the 7 we off the wheel. So let's get another hand. I don't like this hand. There's no acceleration. There's a Dork, but that doesn't really do anything for us. We have a turn 2 Narset, which is pretty bad.
Okay.
We can't really do anything. We can do a turn 2. Yeah, this hand's just bad. This hand's also bad. It is interesting that you have the Force of Negation and the Temporal, but it's just bad. We need more acceleration. Like we're rolling to mold a 5 for acceleration. So let's go to our 6. I'd probably mold a 6 too. There's not even a fetch land for a Brainstorm. Let's go to our 5.
Yeah, you do mold this?
Yeah, I'd mold this. Let's go to our 5.
Okay.
Yeah, this is pretty bad, but at least we have the Priest Titanium and the Llanowar Elves, so we actually probably do have a turn. This is actually probably pretty close to a turn. Turn
3 Paco?
Turn 3 Paco on 5. We have the Gilded Drake, which is pretty good. We have the Veil of Summer to protect it. I do like
that's like almost guaranteed a turn 3 Paco.
So we have to put 2 cards to the bottom though. So I think we actually do put the
Narset.
The Narset and the Gilded Drake are actually probably going to the bottom.
Yeah.
And then we use the Ponder to try to hit a second land drop to play.
Sure. Yeah.
The Priest of Titania off the Llanowar Elves.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Llanowar.
What?
You just pronounced it very fancy. I like Llanowar.
Okay, that's how you say it, I guess. I don't know. What do people think? What do you think of this 5? Sorry, I gotta show Rivers' comment. There's been a lot of comments, so I just want to make sure.
Yeah. We're good.
All right, so Paul, I'll answer that question actually. But I do want to make sure that everyone knows at the end, near the end of this stream, which is ending at 8, and then we're doing a 30-minute intermission in which we're going to gameplay at 8:30. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that. This is where you can submit questions, which we're going to be starting to answer at around 7:50, 7:55. So submit your questions there if you have any long-term questions. But Paul, I'll try to answer that. I just tried to brew Paco, and I found that extra turns were really powerful with the attack step trigger. And Teamer doesn't have a lot of win conditions. So like once you're on turns, you're kind of like, you kind of just have to keep trying things. And the turns are really good with the early win conditions I was trying to do, which were like Underworld Breach loops and like Sundial stuff. And I just eventually just kept tuning. I mean, this deck is like 60 cards different than the original list probably. But yeah, I'm saying that so Horninger, what I was just saying is that our deck is like way worse to play Mental Misstep against than most decks. Like,
yes,
yeah, it's still good, but it's just way worse. All right, so I'm gonna go to our next our next fresh 7. This is a fresh 7. This hand's like almost good, but it's not. I'm gonna try another 7. There's some acceleration here. Like we can play a turn. We'll have 4 mana on turn 2, but it's like really awkward.
Yeah,
we probably.
But if you top deck the land, that's turn 2 Paco, right?
What do you mean?
You said we'll have 4 mana turn 2, right? Isn't that a Mox Diamond or is that a Chrome Mox?
It's a
Am I
Chrome
blind?
Mox.
Oh, sorry. This thing is so blurry on my screen.
Yeah, it's sorry. So yeah, the Chromox is like we don't have anything good to pinch Chromox either. I'm not really happy with this hand. We can see the Force
Yeah.
Striker.
I don't think you need the end of the rail, but yeah.
This is pretty close.
Oh, that's so bad.
Yeah, it's pretty close. If this tapped for mana, it'd be much better. If this was like literally any other land, I'd be much
Yeah.
happier.
Oh,
Because then we'd have the
man.
turn. Yeah, that
These
really
test hands
sucks.
have been betraying you, man.
It's
Oh.
okay. We'll go to 6. Uh, this is pretty
Yeah.
close. It's not
Turn-
quite there. I do like.
So
that
do you
scissors
go
are
Bloom
6.
Tender turn 1?
Yeah, yeah. So what we probably do is like Bloom Tender turn 1 into Halden on turn 2.
Sure.
Can we do that? Yeah. So
Yeah.
what we probably do is we go.
You definitely Bloom Tender turn 1, right? I feel like that's definitely the play.
Oh yeah. Well, I think you're right. It's just can we make Bloom Tender tap for mana on turn 2?
Yeah, you'll tap for green.
Yeah, I just mean like 2 mana because then we can play the Talisman.
No.
That's like pretty sick.
Yeah.
No, we probably play the turn 3 Halden so our deflecting swat's turned on, or turn 2 Halden so our
Yeah.
deflecting swat's turned on, and then we.
Go for the turn 3 Paco, just depending on what you draw.
I think it's no matter what, right? Because we have 2 lands, we have 3 lands probably, and a Bloom Tender that taps for 2 mana. So yeah, we're already there.
Yep, you're right. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
This hand's no good. Second 7. Yeah, I'd probably keep this. Like we have a Soul Ring. Like what the hell? Because it does have a turn 3 Paco. This is our second 7 though. We have a Soul Ring.
Yeah.
We can play the turn 2 Halden. So like sometimes you're okay with the turn 3 Paco if you have a Halden on turn 2. And this is like one of those scenarios where we're kind of happy with it. We get to keep 7 cards. We probably go. This gets a Volcanic, and we play like a turn 1 Volcanic into a Soul Ring. Turn 2, we play Halden, holding up a blue mana, with the Force Negation up. So, all right, we're getting close to the end here. So I'm gonna go over to our
let's go to
Snap
questions.
Keep, Draw Forced Easy Garda. I don't know. Yeah, see, like so, like actually, Pongo, we can't keep a hand that makes 4 mana on turn 2. This hand we can because it plays Halden and is a Soul Ring, and the Soul Ring is just like pretty good. It lets us have interaction up during the next turn where we play Halden, playing Paco on turn 3. But
Yeah.
like it's
All
not
right.
easy. This deck's like not easy to mulligan with. You just have to mulligan for the turn 2 Paco. I go as low as 5. Like once you get to 5 cards, you're like, all right, well now we need to like turn 3 Paco's fine.
Also, for context, people in our audience, Braden is notorious for the aggro mulligans in general. So I don't even know if Paco is necessarily the.
I think it's just the right way to play. Like,
yeah, but I'm just saying it is your play style. I've known you to
For sure.
aggressively mulligan since the day I've met you.
Yeah, BTD battles. Yeah, I think this hand is like fine. It's like fine.
Yeah,
it's a fine 7.
Yeah.
I'm not happy about it, but I'd
Yeah.
keep it. So Paco questions.
Let's go questions. Yeah, I'll read them out to you.
Sure.
This one's from Emerald, who said, "What led Paco?" And we kind of talked about this. What Paco to getting brewed as extra turns commander over any other win conditions?
So first, there's no win conditions in Teamer that are good. That might be a hot take, but there just aren't.
I agree.
Extra turns are really good when you're making tons of mana because like they're like rituals, and then they're also when your commander creates card advantage during the combat step. They're rituals that create card advantage. Additionally, they're very easy to loop because like a lot of regrowth effects go infinite with them. So it just kind of made sense when you're playing like if you just look at the best cards in Teamer, a lot of them are synergistic with extra turn spells.
And it is definitely more synergistic, I would say, than the average cEDH deck. Like a lot of them are like in regular commander terms, a lot of cEDH decks would be classified as good stuff decks, right? With a combo. Whereas I feel like Paco is good stuff-esque, but it definitely has that synergy section kicked up a lot more.
Why am I playing Jace Wielder of Mysteries is the next question.
Yeah.
So it's really good during our combo turns. If you notice, like I mentioned that we have like an Underworld Breach combo that requires us to have cards in our graveyard. It's really good when we're doing that. Additionally, sometimes we're just chaining extra turns. Having a Jace in play like helps us like keep good card advantage, helps us fill our graveyard. It's like, really good there. Finally, sometimes we exile a Tainted Pact or a Demonic Consultation, and we're able to just win the game immediately by getting a Jace Wielder of Mysteries on the battlefield. We can't play Oracle because Oracle's a creature, which means that if we exile it, we no longer have like a win condition. to
Right.
win with our opponent's console effects, and we can't
Hmm.
steal Oracle or Labman with Paco either.
Yep.
So
Right.
we're playing Jace. So
One
I've
thing to
won
note
with
with people, when you're working with infinite turns, one of the best part about a planeswalker is that have zero mana requirements for them to gain you value, right? You play it that one time, and then it is incrementally better on every turn. So when you
yeah.
have a planeswalker in a deck like this, it is increasingly getting better the more turns you're
I've
taking.
ulted a Jace too while storming off extra turn spells, and
Mm, that's
that's
awesome.
that's good.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's pretty good. Additionally, we are on a Tana Pack mana base, so we can actually cast like our opponent's Tana Packs, which is kind of
okay,
hilarious. But it's come
yeah,
up, and I've won from doing it, so I don't really
sure.
mind. Um,
Next question. What are some tips you would give in piloting this deck? For example, play patterns in the deck that may seem odd for others. I think we saw a lot of that in the Mulligans, to be
Sure,
fair.
yeah. Another one is you don't want to kill your opponents. So in most decks, killing your
That's
opponents is
fair.
pretty good. Not
Right.
having opponents is part of winning the game. But in this deck, when you're storming off, you actually want as many opponents as possible. And so the best place for you to be is to have your opponents in such a spot that they are basically dead to any one hit kill from Paco
Okay.
while you're like storming your extra turn spells. So at the end, when you're like kind of like fizzling, you can just kill someone off.
Hmm.
But for the most part, you want to keep people alive so you can keep ripping their extra turn spells off the top. So a lot of the times,
Yep.
like you'll have a lethal Paco for someone, and they'll be like, "Wow, this Paco is really scary," and you can just be like, "But I'm not going to kill you with it because I lose if I do that." And then it'll kind of like trick them into not dealing with Paco because they'll keep thinking like, "Oh, this is someone else's problem," and then
Right.
then all of a sudden it's not, and they
Right.
die.
Like if you tell them, hey, I'm gonna go swing at that Necropotence player right now for 12, they're gonna be like, yeah, I'm not gonna get rid of that and save them 12 life, right? So
Yeah,
that there's that weird sort of politics with this deck, I
yeah, and
feel.
additionally, like they know like I think people at first like I'll lose games with Paco sometimes because people don't know how Paco works. Where like they'll kill Paco because they think like it's coming at them, and they'll be like, "But I'm this player. I'm like the Adnals player," and it's like, "Yeah, but I have to keep everyone in an equally close. Like
Yeah.
I have to make sure I have to manage like my opponent's commander damage. Like, ew, this guy is not winning necessarily right now." But he's grinding pretty successfully. I need to make sure he has 16 commander damage so that I can just bounce one of the blockers or something like that, or cast a Cyclonic Rift, and there's one hit kill, you're dead. If I feel like that person's getting pretty close to comboing off, so
Yeah.
there's just weird stuff like that, or like you'll have weird things where like one time there was a Gilded Drake and someone played Animar, and the person like knew I had a Gilded Drake, and they're like, "Well, why aren't you Gilded Drake in the Animar?" And I was like, "Oh, because I want to Gilded Drake your Selvala," and they were like, "That's awful." And then they finally played their Selvala. I Gilded Draked it, took an extra turn, and tapped my Selvala for 16 mana. And they were like, "Oh, I see why you did that." And I was like, "Yeah,
You're like, I don't play creatures. Get out of here with your Animar.
yeah." Like that Animar does nothing for me. This Selvala makes 16 mana, so
Yeah. Yeah.
and it has haste because I
That's
play
great.
extra turn spells. So
Right.
that was getting pretty greedy. I don't think I won that game, but a lot of the games I've lost with Paco have been because of me being bad at playing Magic and not because of Paco, which is like something I really want to say. Like, I don't know if the deck's difficult to pilot. It probably is difficult to pilot, to be honest. But a lot of games I lose are because I play the deck incorrectly. And this isn't true. Like when I play medium green, I usually like the games I don't win. I just didn't get there. Like I made mostly
Yeah.
correct plays, and I've played Thrasus and Tymna for like 4 or 5 years now. Like
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at piloting that deck. This deck, on the other hand, like I found myself like missequencing seasons past, or not casting a spell at the right time, or playing
Yep.
into a Flusterstorm when I shouldn't have, and
Right.
I lose a lot of games that way, which makes me feel really good because it means the deck is actually like pretty powerful and that I'm the problem. So, which is a
Yeah.
good thing because like it means I have a lot more to learn, which is a
Yeah.
great thing to find out. But I still think the deck is very powerful, even when I lose those games, because I can see like, oh, if I would have just done this one thing differently, I would have won. So that is
Let's
yeah.
I was gonna say this next question, very serious, very intense question from someone who clearly cares about the deck a lot. Dryland Go asked, "Is Paco a good boy or a bad boy?"
So Akima's a bad boy, Paco's a good boy, Final
Paco
answer.
is the good boy. Okay, final answer. And the real question from Axerfet? What about this deck excites you the most?
I think the fact that it's something that like nobody really thought of. Like I've looked through almost every cEDH Discord for the word Paco to see like who was the first person to mention it, and it was me every time, which is like kind of weird. 'Cause,
Yeah,
like that's pretty rare. You're the first person in the community to have like an idea.
yeah,
Because usually like you'll find out Chipper Savant had it and it already has a deck list
sure,
and a
yeah.
Discord. Like for example, I have the Paco Discord. I own that, and I waited like 3 or 4 days for someone to make a Paco Discord, and no one was
Yeah, I
making
remember
one.
you. I remember you messaging me about it. You're like, "Here's the Paco Discord." I waited to see if anyone would jump on the gun, but it's me. It's mine now. This is me.
Yeah, I waited like I really did not want to make it because I didn't want to like get bored of Paco and then end up like owning it. Like I own the
Yeah.
Kenrith Discord too. I don't play Kenrith really ever. Um, I didn't want that to happen again. Well, no one
Yeah.
made it, so I made it.
Yeah.
That's probably what excites me the most, to be honest. It's like fun to feel like you're doing something interesting. Also, like being able
Right.
to say I play Voltron and cEDH is just like really funny. So, um,
All right,
yeah.
very cool, man. This deck's it's pretty exciting, and it's as I said, tackles the format on a unique axis, which, uh, if I were jumping into a tournament like maybe this weekend, I would say like not pick up the deck right away, but if you get a couple reps in, over the next month or two, and then you want to take this to something, I think playing against people who have not played against the deck yet, you're really going to catch people on the back
Oh,
foot, and I think you're going to win games
I
that
think
way.
if you play Paco and people have not heard of it, you will win the majority of your games pretty easily. Like I think, let's say like when the world is like not on fire and the world is not over anymore, um, I think you'll find that like you can go to your local like FNM or whatever and just crush with this deck.
Yeah.
However, I will say you probably won't crush with it too often. You'll probably crush with it that week, and then maybe the next week you'll win again, and then probably after that you'll
They're like, all right, I'm running towards the plowshares. Fine, you did
yeah
it.
yeah yeah. Like your local play groups, that kind of stuff happens where like
Yeah,
online people don't make people kind of like are less inbred, I guess is
yeah,
like the way I think of it. Like there's
sure,
like less
sure.
like decisions being made based off of the weird choices in someone's list. Like
Yeah.
my local meta, there's like 3 people playing medium green, and all the other decks are built to beat medium green, which is like not normal at all.
No, no. Like I've been playing on Nexus a lot, and Squirrel Forest 1 is like a big deck around there, and people are playing around that, and I'm like, why are you playing? People are ready to play against that deck all the time.
Yeah, so it's pretty exciting. So I think we covered all the questions. Yep. So I'm gonna post a link. So this is the link for the chat that starts at 8. That is the YouTube link for the gameplay that starts at 8:30. We'll be back in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That gameplay will be on Cockatrice. Ian and I will be playing, and
Yep.
it
Do you
will
want
be
to?
fun.
Braden will be playing Paco, pretty obviously,
Yeah.
and I will be playing a deck that is pretty exciting. For those of you that do or do not know, I guess I can spoil it now to get people hyped. For those of you who are familiar with Bruce, Tarl, and Thrasios Triton Heroes Evolution, it is the deck that Alton and Hire worked on basically post Blood Pod. It's sort of the upgraded version of that deck, like the new reimagining of it. Alton's pretty excited about it, and we're actually going to have them on at some point to break the deck down. So that's going to be really exciting. I got really excited about the deck when I saw Zerda spoiled because we talked about it a little bit in our set review for Commander 2020. I think that card is really powerful when you have a Thrasios deck that can use Basalt and Grim Monolith to make infinite mana. So that's the idea behind it. Yeah,
Especially when you can neoform your commander into a Seedborn Muse. That's pretty.
definitely.
Pretty.
It's pretty exciting. So I'm going to be trying that list out, and it's pretty spicy, and I'm very excited. It's going to be my first time running it out, but we'll see how it goes. So
Yeah, so we'll be back in
Everybody.
half an hour. We might
Yeah.
be back in like 25 minutes, just doing a little intro stuff. But
sure.
please hang around and get ready for
Definitely.
that to come out. All right.
All right, everyone. From us here at the cEDH Cast, see you in 20 to 30 minutes.
Bye.
Bye.